Nope, it's just going to continue doing that. Sorry, guys. You got a Cloverfield effect going on. Eventually, it should calm down. At any rate, I'm back again, and I'm here for another reading. For those of you just tuning in, this is chapter 17 of Talisman of the Winds. I'm also experimenting with a different thing right now. I'm trying with a microphone on to see if that'll help with the sound quality. I'm not sure. Either that or else there's no sound at all. If there's no sound, let me know, because it means I have to change things. Just scream into chat saying, sound, something, anything. At any rate, without further ado, here goes. Chapter 17, Campaign. The word reached Narnish on the march. Worse yet, the word had come by bird to the capital, and thence by galloper to Narnash, which meant that it was old news by the time it got to him. Anyone who could not avoid being in his presence, such as his servants, noted his mood and walked gingerly around him. The hangers-on who wished for favors from him, at least those who were more experienced, made themselves scarce. Many a man who had turned the king against him by some chance word or deed during those times of anger and such a stain was well nigh impossible to erase later. Everyone was glad that his anger seemed to fall heaviest on Dr. Gobnash. Helfriad is fallen, Dr. Gobnash. A small force of Ascos came up, blew the gate away with a whirlwind, and drove out that lot of fools and cravens who call themselves my garrison. What have you to say to that? Unfortunate, Highness. Unfortunate? Dark Destroyer's teeth. Unfortunate, says my most wise and highly favored master of things magical. The man has known more than a year of this talisman, and still, when it is used to take the initiative of this campaign out of my hands, all he can tell me is, it's bloody unfortunate. He paused a moment after this long speech. Tell me then, Doctor, what have I paid you so handsomely for all these years? Dr. Gobnash showed no sign of anger or fear. What is it you want of me? This was not the sort of statement to quiet the king's mood. What do I want of you? I want Helfriad back, and the supplies it is to provide for me. And I want you to do something about that Morker eating wind talisman. Ah, I see. Well, I assume that we are marching for Helfriad. I can help you there. And if the talisman is there, I can deal with it at the same time. You say this also calmly. I wonder then why you couldn't couldn't have used your magic to see what was to happen and prevent it. Magic has its ways, means, and usages. Predicting futures is notoriously unreliable. If I'd spent all my time scrying for the talisman to see what it is doing each day, I would scarce have had the time to develop a means to combat it. Temporarily robbed of arguments, the king scowled at the doctor, and he then waved a hand. Go away then. Yes, we move to Helfriad, but only because we need it for any extended campaign, and every day required to reduce it is taken away from the main point of the campaign, the reduction of Ascos. Seated at the light folding table in her tent, Lucy looked down at the chip of wood, which bore a single sentence. Narnash moves on Helfriad. It seems to be that mysterious fellow from last year. She looked up at El Coriat. It does, of course. Narnash would naturally move on to Helfriad. It's near to a necessity. if he plans any extended campaign in our territory. It's good to have it confirmed. Well, our schedule seems to be holding. Even Thokkel has returned. You thought he might not? Well, lady, he is a bit impetuous. I could well imagine him going off chaos ways with some plan of his own in mind. Too true. I'm told that he did try to convince Nelta, oh my goodness, sorry, Neltra to say it is much more complicated than to simply read it, I promise you. To let him stay to help hold Helifriad. Neltario was able to resist his notions. And he is an engaging rascal as well. Should you not perhaps change his guards to prevent them from getting too familiar with him? And perhaps falling in with some plan of his against your orders and wishes? She shook her head. I think not. Traheron is one of my steadiest, and he's managed to pass that attitude on to my steadiest. Or onto his men. I doubt they'll be talked into anything wild. The campfire cracked and snapped, tossing a flickering orange glow over the gathered crowd, winking in yellowish gleams on polished metal. Yes, lady, Disickelman said. The raven flying is the badge of Comsalit. He didn't bother stating the obvious, that just because someone wore a badge didn't ensure that he wore it honestly. Well, we'd heard word that Comsalit was coming to join us, bringing all his people. We've also heard that Narnish has had men pursuing Comsalit. I'd appreciate it if you stay here a while I question these 3 messengers, and possibly ask them a question or two yourself. A trick question to unmask false messengers? Certainly, lady, if you think I can help. The 3 messengers were the type to be sent on such a mission, through hostile territory into a territory only a little less hostile. 2 are youngsters at the stage of needing a shave once a week, full of dreams of heroism, but with a lot of native wit and some training. The 3rd was a grizzled man, the sort who has a fair and unbiased notion of his own capabilities, who will undertake a mission for his lord and carry it through without taking undue risks. It would have been simpler, Disickelman reflected, if he had been able to recognize any of the 3, but that would have been expecting too much good luck. Lusomi looked at the older man. Please tell us again your story, how you came to be here. Lady, I am Baradong, and these are Antoshi and Molnash. We are all Comsalit's men. Last year, the Lord Disickelman, he glanced at Disickelman, sent messages to our lord and others, suggesting that they reconsider how much loyalty they owed to King Narnish. Word of these messages came to the king, who of course sent messages of his own, requesting any lords who had received such messages to inform him. Knowing how often a suspicion in the king's mind becomes a certain knowledge of wrongdoing, our lord determined to leave once this year with all his people. Having all our people with us, we were caught up in this a little this side of the border by a force sent from the king. Having nowhere near enough men to stand and fight, Lord Comsalit has been continuing to march, fighting a rearguard action all the way. He asked us to come and find you and ask whether you could give any aid. Lusomi pursed her lips in doubt. I should risk sending a force of my own into territory Narnish still holds, and have him pounce and destroy them? Baradong bowed. Lady, you will do as you see fit, and I can only say what I know. Our people are in desperate straits, and our lord himself would be here before you, save that he is directing the defense of his own people. Disickelman spoke up. Baradong, you know who I am? Silliness, of course he knows. You saw the look he gave you, but the question had to be asked. Baradong looked at him without any trace of irony. Yes, Lord, you are the Lord Disickelman Rodashan. And what wenchman does not know the wench lord serving the Lady Lusomi? So, do you know the tale of my wager with your lord? How I lost 2 silver pieces betting on my red mare? The man's lips twitched, and Disickelman could see as clear as if Baradong had spoken out loud that he knew he was being tested. Lord, as I heard it, my lord lost 10 silver betting against your red mare. Disickelman nodded, and how many people from one end of Wentz to the other might have heard the story. So you say, but back to the beginning of things. Why should your lord be so concerned of Narnish's supposed distrust? I beg your pardon, Lord, but all Wentz knows was what was done to you last year, and for less cause. The loss of Fulsadon was suddenly fresh again. Disickelman nodded. Yes, indeed. He stepped back into his place. Lusomi spoke. Thank you, Baradong. We will discuss the matter and let you know our decision. When the 3 had been ushered out, she turned to Disickelman. Well, Lord, have you anything to say, for good or ill? Lady, I can say nothing for certain. My feeling, though, is that they are nothing more nor less than what they claim. I see. And you would be willing to risk 1,000 men on that feeling? His lips twitched upward a bit. Lady, I will never make idle boasts in your presence, lest you hold me to them. At the risk of sounding like a housewife bargaining for melons in the marketplace, might I suggest that 5,000 be more reasonable? That brought a smile to her own face. Those melons are too dear, Lord Disickelman. Whatever force you take leaves us that much less to face Narnish's main body. Can you achieve it with 3,000? He couldn't help but smile. At this point, I ought to demand no less than 3,500. But no, with good fortune, it can be done with 3,000. So as long as 3,000 are not the dregs of your army. Storm's going to hit us before the end of the day. Thokal commented, sticking out his chin towards the clouds, moving rapidly up from the horizon. Very nice, muttered Moxitrum. So we get to march through mud for most of the day. The storm that came on them so suddenly was not rain, but snow. A sudden, driving, blinding storm, so that a man could hardly see man or horse in front of himself. Shortly after, word passed down the line to set up camp and to try and find shelter from the storm. Tents were rustled into place to get some shelter from the wind, and fires built of whatever fuel could be found. Thokal said nothing to anyone, but he wondered if this unreasonable storm might have come from the use of the whirlwind. At the beginning, it seemed to be the kind of storm that might last for days, but it had blown itself out by midnight, leaving a clear sky full of stars. Day dawned, still clear and cool, but the unhindered sun warmed things rapidly. The march began through 2 feet of wet snow, and as the snow continued to melt, the roads turned to mud. The feet of men and horses turned the surface into thick gray-brown soup that clogged boots and wearied legs. In their place, near the end of the line, the ox carts were badly slowed, for the heavy laden vehicles sunk to the axles. The drivers used several solutions to this problem. First, tossing logs, sticks, stones, and the like into the thick mud to give something solid to travel over. If needed, they hitched a team or two of oxen behind and unhitched a team of 2 of oxen behind and hitched them to the carts in front so that a double team could drag those carts from the mud that had near swallowed them. Some of the rearmost carts were hauled up, not on the road, but on the slightly more solid ground beside the road. All this ground was wet as well, so that the length the cart wheels began to cut into that too. 3 miles away from the previous night's camp, the storm's effects began to peter out, leaving the ground less soft. 10 miles ahead, the ground was dry. The storm, however, delayed their march by a day and a half, perhaps 2 days. I wonder, Lucy said in camp that evening, if this is the kind of effect that Rosario warned us about. Thockel started, then relaxed. She was not reading his thoughts, just thinking things that would occur to anyone who knew enough about the talisman. She had noticed his startlement. You thought about it too? Yes, there's little to go on, but I've been wondering too if the talisman might attract the bad weather it creates. After all, we had a snowstorm draft right across our path. You don't plan to use the whirlwind immediately to see if you're right? He grinned. I can control my curiosity. Highness, my scrying shows the army of Ascos has been held up by a sudden snowstorm. A snowstorm? Good work, Doctor. I will not take credit where none is due, Highness. The snowstorm was none of my doing. It seems there are strictures on the use of the Talisman of the Winds, one of which is the possibility of causing bad weather. Ah, so it's not totally the fearful, destructive weapon we've been led to believe. Oh, it is destructive, Highness. Make no mistake about that. It's only that the controlled destruction is balanced by a certain amount of uncontrolled destruction. This uncontrolled destruction can be mitigated, but the process of mitigation is not exact, and some destruction may creep through. It could indeed be used to destroy an army, but the balancing destruction might well be prohibitive. I believe I understand, but if I possessed the thing, I could use it to destroy the army of Ascos thoroughly, then withdraw and let this uncontrolled destruction destroy the land, could I not? And then when the destruction had run its course, I could return and repopulate the land of my own people? Possibly so, Highness, but doubtful. Wind and weather do not stop for borders. So then I can at least be assured that the amount of destruction they can wreak on my army will be limited by their own fear of what might happen afterward? That is true, Highness, and I hope to be able to interfere with the use of it at all. Call him up ahead, Lord Disselkomen, the scout said. Looks to be mostly women and children, with a few warriors as guards. Badges? Flying Raven, sir. It's Comsalit's bow call, right? Right. They'll be worried and jumpy for sure. Have someone go in with truce signs, explain who we are and that we've come to help. Sir! As they came nearer, they saw that the warriors who guarded the column were old men still capable of holding a weapon, and young boys frightened into seriousness at the responsibility laid on them. Neither old nor young relaxed perceptibly when they were assured that this was truly Lord Disselkomen, and not some trick of Narnish. It was clearer that they had lived with the constant weariness too long for them to believe that rest would ever be possible. The straggling line, women carrying burdens and babies of children and old folk, and a few wagons now pressed into service to carry those least able to walk, slowly came to a jerky halt. A greybeard on a horse came forward to greet Disselkomen. He was still upright for all his years, and he wore an old-fashioned helmet which, though it might have looked ridiculous on another, lent him an air of archaic dignity. Lord Disselkomen, I am Haditson Arlishan. I'm in charge of this group. Well met, Hadatson. Where is Lord Comsalit? The old man jerked his head back towards the column behind him. Back at the rear, leading the defense. Then I'll find him. Is there anything we can do for your people here? Best thing you can do, Lord, is get those Mohican buggers off our necks. Well, We'll do what we can. Any idea of their numbers? Lord Consulat'll better be able to tell you. From what I've heard, somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000. Consulat had been a stout man with a chubby face. The man Disicoman saw seated on a fallen log, legs outstretched towards a near-dying fire, was a pared-down man, whose clothing and armor hung loosely on him, whose face was now weathered and wrinkled and hard. It was clear that the man was holding off fatigue by little more than the force of will. His eyes stared a little dully at Disicoman. Seems fitting you coming to rescue me, Diska. It was your letter that started it all. It was said without particular rancor, perhaps because Consulat was too weary for rancor, but struck all the more painfully for that. Sending those letters last year, all he intended to do was cause disaffection in Wentz. Clearer thought would have shown that these things would likely be the result. Things like this would likely be the result. Worse still, he had known the probable results, but had ignored them in his determination. He tried to stir himself out of the condemnation. How many back there? Dark Destroyer's teeth, Diska. Seems like 1,000,000. I'd guess 1,000? They've been whittling away at us, and we've been whittling at them. Have your men gone into one more fight in them? Okay, give me a minute here. Have your men got one more fight in them? It wasn't meant to be derogatory, but Consulat came to his feet. Chaos away with you, Disicoman Radeshan. My men and I have enough fights in us to get us where we need to go. Easy, Comsa. I didn't mean it that way. I think Bloody Narnish's men have been having it their way too long. Suppose we give them something to think about? Thokal was still a weapon, but a weapon worthy of some degree of respect, was close by when the galloper came in seeking Lady Lusomi. Lady, Commander Neltrahio sends me to tell you that scouting parties from Bloody Narnish's army have come to Helifriad. He says that he's not likely to be able to hold 3 days without your help. Lucy turned to Alcoriad. Do we even have 500 who might be able to arrive there in time and to fight? His face showed his doubts. We might send 500 mounted archers, but even riding hard, they'd likely be arriving in time to find the place well invested, and they wouldn't be able to break through the lines. Send them. Warn them that if they can't get in before the town is surrounded, they're to avoid throwing themselves away. They are to annoy Narnish if they can, and perhaps will arrive in time. Consulat and his force had taken up battle order on a hillside. It would be seen as a last desperate stand, a sacrifice in hopes that most of the families would still escape. They all had a little rest, some even an hour or two of sleep, and stood in their determined ranks. Disicoman's men had shared their arrows with Consulat's archers, who were as ready as they had ever be, short of having another week's sleep and a few good meals. Narnish's commander took in the situation and had his men take up their positions. They were all tired of this fight, pushing forward, clearing ambushes day after day of skirmish and sally and march, and would be glad of the chance to end it by sweeping his forlorn little army off the slope. On command, they surged forward. Grim and silent in the face of the charging army and their war cries, Consulat's men stood to their weapons. Archers began to loose their deadly shafts. Amid their racket, none noticed the song coming faintly from beyond the hill, nor did they notice, until it was too late altogether, the horsemen coming around the hill's shoulder. Narnish's commander faltered for a moment. He saw Disicamon's standard next to the standards of Ascos, and thought the whole of army of Ascos was attacking him. He sent messengers to pull his attack back, which was too late already, for the messengers had barely covered a few yards when the enemy struck the flank of his main body. He could hear the song now, a song being sung by the men of Ascos. Fulsadon, hey! Fulsadon, hey! Fulsadon comes this bloody day! Fulsadon, hey! Fulsadon, how! Fulsadon brings his vengeance now! They began to roll up the flank of the Wensmen, and if that weren't enough, a force of some 200 men, 200 mounted archers came riding hell for leather around the hill, headed straight for the small group standing around the commander. They were hardly enough to overwhelm the force, but they were enough to harass them and make the calm assessment of their predicament difficult. Even adding Comstolet's force to his own numbers, Disicamen did not have enough men to utterly destroy the Wensmen, but given the advantage of surprise, he had enough to give them a fierce check and make them wary. It was a battered and fearful troop, no more than 30 men, haggard and hunted, who sought Lady Lusomi's tent. They had no real leader, just one man willing to speak for all. Ghosts, lady, specters and fearful things, against men we might have fought, but not these. Where is your commander? Commander Trujillo fell in the fighting, lady. So there was fighting then? Oh, lady, there was fighting. Narnish's advance party were no more than 5,000, and they came no nearer than 2 bowshot of the town walls at first. They set up what appeared to be a pole, with a bundle of rags on top, and waited. At nightfall, people began reporting seeing things, dark, headless figures carrying bloody swords, old women weeping, and things that flew close overhead shrieking. I was on the wall, lady, and I saw, near midnight, the approach of rank on rank of glowing green soldiers. I saw myself. Lady, 3 of my arrows went right through one of them without slowing him. It was clear there was no holding the town, lady, so I got my horse and I fled. It was not until morning that the specters ceased to haunt us. The man was putting his best face on his own behavior, but there was no denying that he'd been through a terrifying experience. We sent a force ahead to support Nel Trujillo. Did they not arrive? Lady, I know nothing of that. I see. Find a place to the rear, and get yourself some food, and come with us. A flicker of fear ran over the men's faces, but Lusomi's calm purpose in the clear daylight helped overcome the remembered fear of the frightful things at night. When they had gone, she turned to Alcoriat. So, Helifriad has fallen again. Do we assault it in our turn? I'd suggest not, lady. If Narnish's army is there, they'll block our way. And if they're not, they'd probably love to catch us surrounding the town. New scouting parties were sent out, with fresh instructions. They ranged far forward on all sides, bringing back constant reassurance that Narnish's army seemed to be gathering at Helfriad and had come no further forward than that. Another Ascos horseman met with Lusomi on the road, as her advance parties were reaching Helfriad. He was one of the party that had been sent to reinforce Nel Trujillo. Lady, he said, we arrived too late. We camped well off the road, and in the night we heard strange noises from the direction of the town. Our commander thought it best not to go riding forward into the darkness, whatever might be happening. We heard men on horses flying down from the road from the town, but they didn't stop. In the morning, we advanced with caution and found some 24 men scattered along it, clearly killed in flight. The town was held by Narnish's men, with more arriving all the time. There was no point in drawing attention to ourselves, so we pulled back and camped, sending scouts to assess his forces. This fellow, dressed like one of Bloody Narnish's archers, came up to our camp and handed over this chip of wood with writing on it. Said it was for you. Since he'd come under truce, we couldn't hold him, and he went off. We moved our camp, and I was sent to bring you this, as a warning to those who brought it. He handed over the chip. Narnash has 1,000 horses, 5,000 pikes, and 2,000 light infantry. Dr. Gobnash is with him. Some lords have not joined him. Lucy looked up. Dark Destroyer's teeth, Alcoriat. It's our friend. It would seem to be. But what's his game? Why would he think we would trust one of Narnish's archers? Lucy looked at the messenger. Can you say anything about this? Unfortunately, very little, lady. When I left, we were fairly sure that Narnish had over 800 horse, near enough 5,000 pikes, and over 1,500 light troops. But there were more coming in, and this may be a more accurate count. And what's the point? Demanded Alcoriat. Narnish would prefer to have us underestimating his force so we come to fight? He doesn't want to frighten us off so he has to follow us into our own territory. This, he indicated with the chip in an outflung hand, comes nearer to our own assessment of his forces from various sources, and it's the number we've allowed when gathering our own forces. So why should one of Narnish's archers tell us? Her horse, wanting either to be going or to go nibble grass at the road's edge, stirred under her, and Lucy tightened her hold on the reins and gave the mare a little pat on the neck. I'd say we'd accept this for what it is, but stay watchful. Lord de Sycamore found reason to leave Narnish and join us. Who's to say this archer might not have found his own reasons? They're still hanging back there, Comsa, but now they're in hostile territory, and foraging won't get any easier for them. They won't be moving so quickly anymore. You sound like you're planning on taking your men and heading off chaos away, Diska. Thinking about it, near as I can guess, the real fight is going to happen up north around Helfriad, and Lady Lucy is going to need every armed man she can get. I wouldn't take all my men either. I'd leave you about half, just to keep those lot from trying anything. Comsalet frowned. Not saying I'm not grateful, Diska, but I don't want to take my men and my women and children onto a battlefield. De Sycamore waved a hand. Wouldn't ask you to. Think about it this way. You're keeping that lot back there from joining Narnish on the battlefield. That in itself is a help to Lady Joan Lusomi. As he walked back to his own tent, he wondered, where in chaos did that come from? Confusing Junomi with Lady Lusomi? He shook his head. Mine's starting to go, old fool. Okay. And that was chapter 17. So, yeah. That was it for this evening. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to you again tomorrow, and I'm going to try with the less shaky cam. Hopefully that'll work better. Okay. Good night.